Hello, in few days, it will be time for the GCSE. Time is of the essence and we need to prepare. So in today's video, we'll be looking at A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. A Christmas Carol is your question for your GCSE English Literature paper 1, and it will really be exciting if we can do the revision and everything before it's time for your exam. So today, I'll be giving you a bite size of A Christmas Carol, a revision of it, what you should know, the essence. Of course, you should know the context, the theme, the characters, and some good quotations for your analysis. So let's quickly cut to the chase. Let's look at the context. Of course, our first context is the Industrial Revolution. Remember that Dickens was a Victorian writer. He was there at the height of Industrial Revolution. He was there and he knew the essence of it. He knew what was going on. He was very, very critical about the division between the poor and the rich, the social division. That's why if you notice, most of Dickens' work, apart from A Christmas Carol, most of them are basically dwelling on poverty, on the division between the social classes. And he was a critic of this. And that's why he wrote A Christmas Carol. He was a critic because he believed that the Industrial Revolution brought about a social divide in the society. And he was not happy with this, and he tried to write the Christmas Carol to tell them that you can be redeemed, you could actually change from this, and we could actually bring a form of unity, and we shouldn't be differentiating between the poor and the rich. Second context is Dickens' father went to a debtor's prison. Yes, Dickens, the writer of A Christmas Carol, his father actually went to a debtor's prison. So at the age of 12, Dickens had to cater and work for himself. And that's why you see most of Dickens' works are based on poverty, and child ignorance. He is actually writing from a place of experience. He has experienced it, and that's why he writes a lot about it. He feels the pain. So someone that has catered for himself as young as the age of 12 actually have seen these things, and that is why all this inspiration came for him to write A Christmas Carol. And many other books he has written, it deals with poverty and ignorance. The 1834 New Poor Law. The 1834 New Poor Law states that if you're poor and you don't have anything to cater for yourself, you can come work for the government for free, and then they will provide you the workhouses. They have workhouses, so these workhouses will provide you with free accommodation. But there, the free accommodation were cold factory stores, and Dickens was highly critical of this. He saw this as a punishment for the poor. He sees that the high and the mighty are punishing the poor, and he was highly critical of this, and that's why most of his books are about poverty and everything. And basically, Dickens empathizes with the poor. He feels the pain. He understands what the poor go through, especially in the Victorian era. That's why most of his books are based on this. And trust me, he's writing from a place of experience. Okay, our final context, Thomas Malthus. Now, this man, Thomas Malthus, came up with a very interesting theory. The theory states that overpopulation is the leading cause of poverty. So that means pandemic, diseases, war, sicknesses are actually a good thing, because it will kill quite a number of us. And then what will happen? Once it's able to kill quite a number of us, the population will reduce, and then everything will be fine. Dickens was highly critical of this. He found this theory as a very insensitive theory. And it make it feel like, okay, so poverty, the poor people do not deserve to live, they are meant to die. So it's just the rich that should be in the whole world. Poverty is the cause of overpopulation, so everybody that is poor should die. He felt that this theory was insensitive, and he was highly critical of this theory by Thomas Malthus. The theme of Christmas. Now, the theme of Christmas is, of course, Christmas Carol is the title of this book. During this period, people were quite religious. At the time where this book was written, people were quite religious, and they really take Christmas as a very important day. We all know the story of Christmas. Now, Dickens used this book, first of all, to remind people of what Christmas really means. Remind us to be charitable, to have charity. We all know the story of Jesus Christ and how he was born, and the 3 wise men bringing gifts. So it reminds us that Christmas is about being charitable to people. Give to people, your workers, people close to you. Although we know that the main character, the protagonist of this story, Scrooge, wasn't like that. he was a bit isolated from his family, and there are reasons why we'll get into it. He doesn't really like Christmas, and even when his nephew Fred invited him for the family gathering for Christmas, he basically didn't want to go. He was not interested. But Dixon, the writer of this book, is trying to remind us of the importance of Christmas. First of all, that it is a time to be charitable, and secondly, is the time for us to know the importance of family, friends, loved ones, neighbors, people close to us, that we should use this time of Christmas to be with our family. We know how it is. We go to see our parents and family, sisters, siblings, everyone. So to let us know the importance of charity and the importance of family. The theme of redemption and transformation. Now, Dixon is not just trying to scare his readers and show how terrible Scrooge was. No, he's trying to tell us that you can actually have a positive outcome if you genuinely change. As in the case of Scrooge. Scrooge would have been terrible at the beginning, but he was transformed, he changed, he was redeemed. So God can actually give us a second chance if we decide to change. As in the example of Scrooge. Scrooge was a very critical example. He was transformed, he was given a second chance as redemption, and then he changed. Everything made good for him. So as a boss or a company owner or something, maybe you are not treating your workers right. If you decide to change right now, you'll be redeemed and be given a second chance. Just the same way Scrooge was changed. And that is the theme of transformation. So when you're talking about the theme of redemption and transformation, you can talk about Scrooge. Because Scrooge was a very, very good example for this. And you could also relate his character to Bob. Bob was actually this direct opposite. He was a caring father. He knew the importance of joy. Although he was poor, he was not as rich as Scrooge, but we could see how he was given a second chance. And that second chance actually affected Tiny Tim, because Tiny Tim, his death was avoided because of what? Scrooge's transformation. Imagine he didn't change, probably Tiny Tim would have died. So it also shows us that our transformation is also connected to somebody else's life or change. When we transform and we are ready, we'll be given a second chance, and our second chance will benefit those, to benefit our workers and those close, our neighbors and our families together, just as it benefited Scrooge. Is on charity. He's telling us to be charitable. Dixon wrote the Christmas Carol basically for the upper class, to show them the importance of charity, the importance of being good to your workers, the importance of you paying your workers good wages, taking care of them. Because he noticed then in the Victoria era, there was a lot of suffering. There was a lot of demarcation between the poor and the rich. And he wrote this book for us to be, that we the rich, the reason why you're rich is because you are supposed to give. You're supposed to give. You need to be charitable, especially during Christmas. Help the poor, give the needy food, help them. And that is what the whole Christmas Carol is all about. And it was centered on Scrooge transformation. When Scrooge finally transformed, he was able to help Tiny Tim and help everyone around him. So that is the importance of this book. This book was basically on charity for the upper class towards the working class, that we should be charitable to them. We should give and not try to eradicate poverty by thinking that they should be dead or something. On the theme of social injustice, Dixon was highly critical of the political heads. He wrote this book basically to trigger them to change. He wanted to trigger the government, the politicians there to change, because he saw the social imbalance, the demarcation between the poor and the rich. And he wrote this book. This book was highly critical of the social injustice being done to the poor. At the theme of family and relationship. Now, the Bob Cratchit family is a great illustration of family and relationship. Despite the fact that Bob's family were poor, they still have this love and unity within their family. So Dixon tries to tell us that, okay, that we should value family relationship over material wealth. Also, we could see Scrooge and Fred, their relationship. Scrooge was basically abandoned, rejected by his family. He was isolated on his own. Why? Because there's no love and unity. Despite all the money he has, despite the wealth and everything, despite being the owner of a company where Bob was actually working, he still doesn't have that love from his family and that unity. So Dixon is trying to tell us that we should value family over material wealth. We could also see, this could also be illustrated in when we were taken back to how Scrooge grew up. How he grew up. How did Scrooge grow up? He grew up in his family. He kind of feels for his sister. He still loves his sister, but he rejected them, so he's kind of isolated. Many times where he rejects Fred, he didn't go to the family function. He was invited by Fred. He didn't go. So all these things led to a kind of So it kind of relationship decline in Scrooge's life. So basically, Dixon is trying to tell us the importance of family, the importance of companionship with your family, the importance of peace and unity with your family. That family is a place of solace, is a place where you could go to in times of hardship, in times of when things are going wrong. Family is should be your safe haven where you should go and have companionship, relationship. So it kind of used this to tell us the importance of family and relationship. The theme of poverty is the final thing for today. Now, Scrooge, Dixon rather tries to highlight. Dixon highlights this theme of poverty. He highlights it in such a way that he comes to tell us that it shows us how Scrooge was ignorant of the plight of the poor. Scrooge was ignorant about even the workers working under him. He actually paid them pitiful wages. Their wages are really bad. He doesn't pay them well. And the Cratchit family were actually dependent on his pay because they work for him. They were poor and broke, despite working for Scrooge that was wealthy, and he still didn't pay them well. Despite that, they still have love in their family. So it kind of shows that how the poor are being treated by those in the higher social class. Basically, their financial welfare, their financial security is basically dependent on Scrooge, and Scrooge doesn't even pay them well. We also see the son of Bob Cratchit, Tiny Tim. He's also one of the characters you could discuss when it comes to the theme of poverty, because he represented the most vulnerable members of the society. Why is that? He was disabled. His family were not just poor, he was also living with a disability. And despite this, he wasn't even pitied. But thank God that when Scrooge was transformed, he was able to at least change the outcome of Tiny Tim's life, because he would have been dead. But thank God for the ghost of the Christmas past, present, and future, all the yet to come that appeared to him, and all were the catalyst of Scrooge's change. We'll be going into that when we get to the characters. But right now in the theme of poverty, we could see the Bob Cratchit family, and we could also see Tiny Tim, of how poor they are, but they still live in unity, in peace, and love. They still know the importance of love, or the importance of family, despite being poor, despite the fact that Scrooge paid them bad wages. He wasn't paying them well, and he wasn't paying any attention to them. So we could actually use them as the characters for the theme of poverty, and how Scrooge was actually ignorant of this. He was ignorant of his workers being poor, of even the ignorance of he was actually ignorant of the society as a whole. But thank God for his transformation. So we have the character of Scrooge. First, from the background of Scrooge, Scrooge has an absent father. He didn't really have the pleasure of being with his father most of the time. He had a lonely childhood. He mostly grew up on his own, struggled on his own. Finally, thank God, he became rich. He's solitary, meaning that he's always isolated, alone, does not really have a friend or a family close to him. He's hardened. He has a very strong face. When you see Scrooge, he's not this kind of person that is approachable. Alone. He's materialistic. He's very, very materialistic. He really cares about his money. He cares about the things. If he is ignorant about the poor, he just cares about the money that he has. But by the end of this novella, we know that he transformed. He transformed from being a stingy miser to a kind and benevolent man. So if you're talking about any character, like I've always said in my previous videos, always follow the character all through to the end. Tell us what this character was at the beginning. We also saw Scrooge as a stingy, not really terrible, but stingy, solitary, and always alone, isolated, a bit grumpy. He doesn't really want to talk, and he hates to give charity. Any talk about charity, he tries to get away from it. He doesn't love to give. He's not charitable. But at the end, we saw his transformation to a philanthropist, to a very kind and benevolent man. It was even the one that helped Tiny Tim and helped to reverse the prediction of Tiny Tim's death. He helped to reverse it. So we saw this transformation. And there are some quotations you could give if you're talking about Scrooge, or talking about his character, or talking about a theme that involves him. We have the first quotation here: solitary as an oyster. This simile here is very important. We know what it is. It kind of shows comparing to an oyster, kind of show that it's, the way an oyster is, the physical appearance of it is hard, rough. So it kind of gives us a picture of Scrooge as someone who, on the outside, on the exterior part of him, he looks very hard, very, very isolated, like someone that you couldn't even approach. At the thought of anything charity, he kind of said, no, I don't want. He has this look on the outside, but we know how an oyster is on the inside, that there's something in the inside of it. So as hard as he is on the outside, there is something in him that is still good, that he needs to be opened up. And when it's open up, you see that he's not actually that kind of person. And that's what we could see from him, trying to describe him as someone who has good in him, but he needs something to open it up. And we're happy that it was opened up at the end. And we saw that Scrooge wasn't just a terrible man, he was just ignorant of so many things, and he was able to improve. We have Bah Humbug. This is a normal chant that Scrooge makes. He makes this chant, or it's like a slangs. He usually say this when they talk about Christmas, they talk about charity, when they talk about anything about money. It makes this Bah Humbug, like it's scam, it's not relevant. What you're saying, he has scam. It doesn't sound logical to him for you to give, for you to be charitable. He finds it as offensive. He finds it as something like you are being scammed or something that is wrong. Doesn't seem logical to him. He feels it's wrong. There are no prisons, workhouses. They deserve his charity. This particular quotation highlights Scrooge's belief that the poor should be taken to financial, all these government institutions. We talked about this when we're talking about the context, that they should be taken to government institutions where that's where he pays his tax. He pays his tax there, and his tax is basically funding these government institutions and workhouses. They should go there and get treated. He actually said this quotation to two men he saw begging for money for the poor. They were actually begging for money to help the poor. And he was like, why are you begging? Why don't you just take this poor to all these government institutions or workhouses? They actually they offer them free accommodation if they work for free. So take them there. I am paying my taxes, and he's funding those institutions. So this kind of shows his lack of empathy for human suffering. It shows his lack of empathy for the poor, for those suffering. Or he even said, okay, if you cannot take them to these workers, let them just die. This will help us reduce the population. Remember Thomas Malthus' theory, he was referring to that. They should just die and reduce the population. This happy or unhappy, this kind of one of the ghosts was one who said this, and this kind of depicts, it's kind of tell us that you as a boss, or as the owner of a company that has workers, you determine if your workers are happy or unhappy. When you pay them good wages, they will be happy, and if you pay them less, they will be unhappy. So you determine the happiness of people working under you. Then he said, I will live in the past, present, and future. This actually highlights Scrooge's redemption. This was the climax of the novella. This highlights his redemption. After waking up from the experiences with the three ghosts, he kind of realized himself, and he has been redeemed. And he decided to say, okay, since I've seen all this, I've decided to change. So my past will be unwritten. My past is all gone. I am going to rewrite my present. My present will be good, and I'm going to rewrite my future. So it's kind of talking about how his past would also build him to change his present condition. He will become charitable. He will become a philanthropist, and then this will create a legacy for him in the future. Now, Bob Cratchit works for Scrooge. He's a worker for Scrooge, and he's the direct contrast to Scrooge's character. He represents the working class. They work for Scrooge. He works to provide for his family, especially his son, Tiny Tim, his disabled son, Tiny Tim. And he's a father to Tiny Tim. He's kind, he's family oriented, and he's compassionate. And by the end of the novella, Bob's situation was improved due to Scrooge's transformation. Since Scrooge was able to transform towards the end, this improved his life and even the life of his son, Tiny Tim. And we could look at some quotations from him. We have, I will give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. This was said in a family modest dinner. Bob had a family modest dinner, and he still gave a toast to his boss, Scrooge. Despite the fact that Scrooge pays them poor wages, he still gives a toast to him because technically, Scrooge is the one that provided. He paid for the food they are eating because he pays his wages, and from the wages he's able to provide the little he can for his family. So this shows his incredible patience, his immunity, his humbleness, his patience, his kindness, in total contrast to Scrooge, who is stingy, hardened, and not very kind. This still shows respect, gives respect to him, despite the poor wages that Scrooge pays them. That is incredible. We also have, if quite convenient, sir. This is also spoken by Bob when he actually was asking for a Christmas day off. He went to meet his boss to ask for his Christmas day off, and obviously he sounds very apologetic and humble in asking for it. This shows the imbalance between the working class and the rich in the society, because this is him begging, being apologetic, begging to take a Christmas day off, and being so humble to ask for it. This shows the imbalance between the two classes, working class and my little child. This is a quotation from where Scrooge was shown the vision of his future by by the ghost of Christmas yet to come. This shows Bob kind of grieving for his death of his son, Tiny Tim. And this served as a climax. In fact, this was one of the highest points where Scrooge actually changed, because this really affected him emotionally. He saw a father grieving for his son. He saw a father devastated for the death of his son. And moved to the ghost of Christmas past. The first ghost that appeared, okay, after Mali, after his co-worker appeared to him, the next ghost that appeared to him was the ghost of Christmas past. The ghost of Christmas that shows Scrooge's past. It represents his memories, the gothic, the supernatural, strange. It was strange, it was gentle, and it was firm. It was commanding. It takes Scrooge to visit important past in his past. It took him to his younger self, and it prompted him to begin to reflect on his actions, begin to reflect of how he was and what is he now. Kind of made him to reflect. And then we have quotations like, a solitary child neglected by his friend is left there still. Now, this was when the ghost of Christmas past showed Scrooge his younger self. This kind of proved that Scrooge was not always a monster. He wasn't actually a bad person, but he was lonely. He was abandoned when he was a child. And this is what led to who he is right now. When Scrooge saw this, he really wept. It touched him, and this made him to weep. And this made him to think about his feelings, think about his decision, think about what he is right now. And then he finally realized that, oh, the past is actually very important, because it kind of makes you who you are right now. You could change who you are, but sometimes this past kind of reflects on us later on. So that is it. And then we have rise and walk with me. This was now the first command that Scrooge was given. The ghost of Christmas has given him a command to rise and walk with him. This kind of signifies that for you to be redeemed, for you to be transformed, you need to make efforts. You need to make movement. His effort was what helped him. You need to learn from the past, from your past memories, and now take a step forward now for your transformation. So if you want to change, you need to do something. You don't just sit and lie on your bed and rest and say, oh, I'm going to change. No, there is something you must do. A responsibility is placed on you. And that's what this word, rise and walk with me. Walk with me. Reflect on your past. Change your present and make your future great. This is just what this kind of signifies. Then we have, these are but shadows of the things that have been. This is when the ghost was trying to tell him that most of the things he's seen, they are not real. They can't talk and they can't speak. The ghost of Christmas past was telling him that most of these visions you are seeing, they can't talk, they can't see. So this kind of shows us how surreal, how gothic and supernatural this is. Scrooge is more receptive to these ghosts. It shows Scrooge various characters' Christmas. It shows Scrooge how families around the world is celebrating Christmas, how Bob is celebrating his Christmas, how his workers are celebrating their Christmas, how they're all happy with their family and friends and neighbors, and Scrooge is all alone. We also have, he's a generous character. It shows Scrooge the importance of being generous, of being charitable. He was critical and he was very observant. He was probably even the opposite. He was really cheerful than the other ghost, than the previous ghost. And so Scrooge kind of relates more with this ghost. He kind of embraces this ghost because this ghost was actually friendly. So we have quotations from the ghost. We have, come in and know me better, man. This kind of establishes the ghost calmness, highlights the ghost warmth, and kind of challenges Scrooge Methusean view and about the advocacy. It kind of advocates for the poor, kind of shows the importance of charity. He was cheerful and friendly, giving like a contrast to Scrooge's character and showing him the importance of generosity. You decide what men shall live, what men shall die. This kind of shows us, it's trying to tell us, it's kind of using Scrooge was against him, that everybody is valuable. So you're not the one to decide who will die and who will live. Every human being is valuable. Therefore, is challenging the Methusean theory. Is challenging that theory and is saying that, look, man, everybody is valuable. Okay, and we also have the spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. So the spirit, actually, this quotation is like the spirit pointed to his grave. And this is showing that this is going to be your end. The end of your life is going to be death, and you can't change it. That's where you're going to die. And I think this was what brought about the transformation in Scrooge's character. He realized that he was going to die. And then we have, it was shrouded in a deep black garment. This describes the dressing of how this ghost looked. It was mysterious, it was gothic, it looks supernatural, it looks dreadful. And Scrooge definitely dread this ghost. So basically, all the ghosts that appeared to Scrooge had their importance. Even Marley, his former partner, the ghost also was one of the first people to make him realize his dreams. And we know that the ghost of Christmas past showed him his memories, his childhood, where he was coming from. The ghost of Christmas present showed him where he is right now and telling him the importance of charity. And we know that the ghost of Christmas yet to come is showing him how it's going to end if he doesn't change, if he doesn't redeem himself, if he doesn't change his ways. That is how it will end. So these are the important points that you should know and you should revise for your English Literature Paper 1 examination. I hope this helps. Revise it, check out all the characters and know them, know the importance, know all these quotations, and you'll be good to go.